Mr. Financial Phil McCoy from Ameriprise Financial and the Mirius Group of Financial Advisors, Winchester Avenue, Martinsburg. Good morning, Philly.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
We are snowy. How are you?
I'm the same. I'm snowy, but I'm still living the dream.
Are you folks keeping office hours today?
We are keeping virtual office hours. We won't be in the office. We will all work from home. We have access to our phones and all the capabilities except for seeing our smiling face in the office due to snow cleanup and safety precautions. We're going to stick it at home today.
We should do a show where we're all from our own individual homes, Bill, so we can see what goes on in the background. For Bill, we could see the servant staff preparing the evening formal dinner at the Gilstrap residence. I don't know what we'd see. He'd be there cleaning rifles and writing books, I guess.
And what would we see at the Financial Fields house?
What would we see there, Phil?
You'd see a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers stuff hanging up with tears coming from it. And you would see pictures of my family, and you would see a little bit, as I'm looking at right now, old days of glory for Shepherd football hanging up in my downstairs office. Speaking
of Shepherd, they are closed today, as is Hagerstown Community College. Local high schools are closed. City government is closed. Garbage day put off a day. Move it back one day. County governments are closed too. And the libraries are also closed for today. Just assume most of the stuff that's public in nature, I'm not talking about businesses, but public in nature like libraries and schools and such will be closed. And if you have any questions, make sure you call or call them up online and find out if they're open there today. Phil, you mentioned the Steelers, 4 straight losses to end the season. You had to talk to Dylan this morning, too, whose Ravens won 4 straight to pick up a division championship. And we go to Baltimore to play the Ravens a third time this Saturday night. Dylan's got his ears on. He's ready to talk trash on us, Phil.
I'm sure he is. I didn't get to talk to Dylan because you picked up the phone, thankfully.
Oh, that's right.
You picked up the phone because as much as I like Dylan, the last person I wanted to talk to this morning was Dylan Bishop.
There's a segue.
Hi, Phil. Good morning. How's it going? Hey,
Dylan. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah. I think I got to hold back a little bit this week on the off chance that the Steelers beat the Ravens this weekend. And I say on the off chance because, well, it can't be that likely, right?
Well, and I would say this, going into for the Steelers, after they lost to the Bengals, I was like, well, here we go again. 4 consecutive losses. But to find out that they're playing the Ravens, to be clear, I wouldn't feel good if Pittsburgh was playing the Raiders this weekend. But given the history against the Ravens, I do feel as if they won't get blown out. I do feel that. So there'll be a little bit of electricity in the air. Maybe they could bounce back and get a win. But their offense has been terrible. Their defense gave them multiple chances to win that game against Cincinnati, and the offense refused to do so. George Pickens refused to catch the ball. Russell Wilson refused to look at the clock. A lot of issues there with Pittsburgh's offense. It feels a lot like it did last year, to be honest with you, with Russell Wilson taking the place of Kenny Pickett. Arthur Smith taking the place of Matt Canada.
And the toss sweep to Najee taking the place of the jet sweep that Matt Canada loved to run. Just when I watch them call plays, I swear, I think they call plays just because it's on the play sheet. Like, what haven't we run in 5 minutes? Oh, yeah, toss sweep to the slowest running back in the league. Let's try that one again. No one's expecting that one.
Yeah, I don't get it. And having said all of that, Pat Fairmead catches that ball. There's an outside shot that Chris Boswell could kick a 3-mile-long field goal and win the game, and against the surging Bengals team. So, I wouldn't say that I'm confident, but I'm very hopeful. Now, knowing me, because I live in fandom, by the time the weekend rolls around, I'm going to be 100% confident Pittsburgh's going to win the football game.
Well, Denver did everybody in the AFC a favor by winning, because that knocked the Bengals out of the playoffs, and I guarantee you, nobody wanted to see Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase come to town to play. Look at the Ravens and Bengals played twice this year. The Ravens won by what, Dylan? 1 point and 2 points?
They won both games. I think that's the important part.
But
But yes, it was.
Right?
It was. I think by 3 in overtime the first time, and then by 1 point.
Yeah, you're right. It was a kick in overtime. Those were those were both shootouts. Those were high-scoring games. And that's the thing about you have a great quarterback on the other side. I mean, take Patrick Mahomes away from Kansas City. How good is Kansas City this year? Even last year, Kansas City was like 11-6 in the regular season last year.
Yeah.
You take Patrick Mahomes away from that team. It's a quarterback-driven league. You got to have a quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, you're among the riffraff out there, right? Phil, let's talk money because we didn't get our Santa rally, but we're getting it kind of late. It's been a good Friday, and today's a pretty good start too.
Yeah, and as we talked about at 6:30 this morning, some of the headlines are almost exactly the same as they were last year at this time. We didn't get a Santa Claus rally last year either, and then early in the year, the focus, and guess what? The focus is on NVIDIA. NVIDIA, Tesla. Tesla had a great Friday, which kind of surprised me, quite honestly, but the Thursday it had reduced auto sales, and Friday we decided we didn't care about that, and we cared more about their artificial intelligence capabilities, and that has rolled over into this morning. And NVIDIA had a super day on Friday as well, and it looks like yet again this morning the semiconductor ETF in pre-market trading. Now, this is an exchange-traded fund, so you wouldn't see this much activity going on in an exchange-traded fund because they hold a lot of different positions. But there's an exchange-traded. I don't want to give out the ticker symbol, but one we kind of follow to gauge that market is up just under 3% in overnight trading, and that's an exchange-traded fund. You'll see that in individual positions, but with a cluster of positions, that is surprising, and it's positive for those that have a lot of exposure in that. But it does look a lot like last year. Now, hopefully, that portends to an equity market that looks like last year, because that's something else we had talked about. It lost some of its luster. Our overall markets lost some of its luster in December, and we gave some of it back. But when you look at the year as a whole, I'll take that again. I'll take that every single year, even with the bad December. But as we head into 2025, it's the same stuff. And as much as I'm going to try to avoid talking about the Federal Reserve, it's kind of hard to because it is what matters right now. And another thing that had happened over the weekend is there's rumblings that the tariffs that President-elect Trump had promised, he has softened his stance on some and is going after certain sectors or products and not blanket tariffs as he had once said. So that has given our markets a little bit of a boost there as well. Regardless of whether or not you agree with tariffs, that is one inflationary pressure, which would temper the Federal Reserve in the rate cutting process.
Tesla's PE ratio is 112.5, Phil, which tells me that Wall Street doesn't value Tesla as a car manufacturer, but as a tech company.
It does, and it kind of fits. We used to talk about Amazon in the same light, but where what is it kind of company? Is it a tech company? Is it a retail company? And it can take the face of either one of those. Now as more and more Teslas are being sold, and the infrastructure, which is yet to be seen, but the infrastructure is there to be had in markets such as ours, that makes it a little bit easier in comfort for consumers buying that. It can take the face of an automobile manufacturer or a tech company. It can do either one, and that's in part of the reason why it has done so well of late. Because if you don't like it as an auto manufacturer, do you like it for its artificial intelligence capabilities? But
at some point, it has to be valued as a car manufacturer, so Bill will quit taunting me for selling it.
I was going to say just the opposite. Rob trash talks you with sports, Phil. He trash talks me with Tesla. So every time Tesla takes a small dip, I get these barrage of emails or texts saying what an idiot I am holding on to it. And then I keep reminding him that he sold it for what, several $100s ago.
$150.
And that's exactly what you want. When you have a position in something and you're actually losing money when it goes bad, goes down, the first thing you want is a good friend texting you, rubbing it in your face that you're losing money.
Bill's only telling half the truth here, Phil. The truth is, when it goes up, Bill sends me text going, "Hey, Rob, what price did you sell this at again?" That's where this started.
He has to get you back. It's
get me back for what?
To pay
every
you
time
back.
it
To
drops
pay
a
you back.
dollar, you bring it up. I listen to
Phil-
the show,
Phil-
even if I'm not on.
Phil, you
I
know
get
me
something-
well enough to know I don't needle my friends. I don't turn
Oh
the
my
knife. I'm not that kind of person.
Come on, Dylan, jump in.
That's not what I do. I think most people listening to this show can attest to that.
I take it you don't consider myself and Bill and John and everyone else your friends.
Dear friends, Phil.
I am full of holes from you. I can't even drink water. It all pours out.
I don't know where this is coming from. I'm flummoxed, dumbfounded. Phil, how many interest rates are we expecting? How many interest rate cuts are we expecting in 2025? Reasonable expectations, not this person says 6 and this person says 2. What's reasonable? 2?
2 right now. Right now, the Fed's dot plot, which is kind of one of the reasons we had such a bad December. The dot plot suggested that instead of the 6 that they had thought back in the early fall, that now there's only going to be 2. And there's not a whole lot of concern as long as we're still in that rate cutting process. We also have to look at the bond market as well. So the more conservative investors that hold more bonds than what maybe a younger investor or less aggressive investor would have is still kind of trying to recover from 2022. And that recovery is all based off of the perception of what the Federal Reserve will do. So there's parts of our portfolio that hasn't fully recovered from 2022 yet, but it's in the recovery mode. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. So as long as there's no conversation going, a serious conversation that is, instead of clickbait, or going around about rate increases again, we are in a rate cutting in the rate cutting process. It's just the timing of that. It's going to change. It'll change every Fed meeting. I'm sure it will. You know, those dot plots are perceptions in what they think will happen, and as we've seen in the past, it's going to change. We just don't know. That's why it's all the economic data, like the jobs report that will come out this Friday, is such a big movement of the market, because what the market is anticipating that the Federal Reserve will look at this and change that dot plot and maybe change the rate cutting process. But as long as we're in that downward cycle, I don't really know that it matters how much they cut in the overall scheme of things. It's just that they are still cutting and not increasing rates. It just may take a little bit longer for recovery. And on the bond side,
I was reading an article about index funds yesterday, Phil, and it was talking about what used to be the benchmark S&P 500 index fund, the Vanguard. When they was talking about how Vanguard was going from a financial model from its founder, who was very much into keeping fees as low as possible, into a wealth advisory model in which you're trying to generate more fees. I'm talking about these big funds and how these things work. And it was lamenting the fact that this was like one of the last few. And it made me think, because the vast majority of people and fund managers don't beat the S&P 500 index. Why do people buy individual stocks and not just buy a S&P 500 index, whether it's a mutual fund or an ETF?
Well, when you go into in this, the idea of diversification, which we're huge fans of, there is a thing. There's something to be considered about over diversification. So when you diversify, on one hand, you're raising the floor on what may happen. So let's look at if you had NVIDIA stock, Apple, and Tesla, and you would be really, really happy for over the last decade. But when those guys fall, it's extremely, extremely painful. But when the overall markets fall because of its diversification, even in an index fund, look at 2022, I think it was down 20%, 21%. And while that sounds drastic, those things happen did Tesla drop at one point this year? I could be wrong. Did Tesla drop in 24, at least 20% at one point?
Yes, it did.
I think it did. And it rarely raises an eyebrow on the individual stock. So the reason a lot of people don't go just with an S&P 500 fund is because you don't want to see those 22% drops in your overall portfolio. You diversify some. So when you look at those at the mid caps and the small caps and even bonds, I know bonds have been on the downswing for quite some time, but up until this really low rate environment that we lived in, bonds, ask anyone in a TSP fund how happy they are with the G fund. Overall, current retirees, they would boast about the G card, but current employees aren't so happy with it. But the diversification prevents these collapses of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%.
Bill, I got to jump in.
Oh,
We are out of time, as they say in Canada. So how do we reach you today for more information?
you can reach us still at 304-263-4343 or stop by tomorrow for an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue right here in Martinsburg.
Thank you, Phil. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Take
Phil.
care.
And you can catch Phil each morning at 6:38, replayed at 7:38. This is Talk Radio, WRNR Martinsburg.